What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Grind Line Podcast. You're listening to episode 262. I'm your host, Greg. We have a great episode tonight. So we are coming up on All-Star break, and I thought I would do kind of like a gathering of the podcasts, which I thought would be cool, and do kind of a roundtable look back at the season, look forward to what's coming up, answer some questions. But tonight, we have Brian Fischer and Scotty Bentley from the Locked On Red Wings podcast, and we have Daniella Bruce, who's now like everything Red Wings. I'm going to call her Daniella Bruce from the Red and White Authority now. To fit the kind of podcast realm there. But how are you guys doing tonight? How's it going?
Doing great, man. Excited to do this. It's been a while since we've done a crossover. I think last summer during the off season we did one. That was a lot of fun.
Before the season started.
And this is our first time talking to Daniella on a podcast format, so we're pumped to do that as well. It's great talking to you, Daniella.
Yeah, this is awesome. If I'm being honest about how I'm doing, not great after last night's football game, but this is exciting, and this is going to change my mood a little bit.
We have things to look forward to. We look forward to the Red Wings. We leave the past behind us, and we look forward to the future. Scotty, how are you?
Good, man. Good. Yeah, I'm technically on the clock with the news, by the way. So like if I get a phone call, I'll just mute myself and I'll just be talking to no one. So like that may happen in the next hour. But I'm doing great. Doing great. Busy but great. So
we have a lot to pack in, and Scotty, hopefully there is no absolutely breaking news that happens in the middle of this.
Need my luck for sure.
But I think we're going to start by taking a look back at the season. So I want to kind of start with what you guys think has been working. So we saw a really hot start to the season. We saw one of the most abysmal Decembers that I think we've ever seen as Red Wings fans. But January, they've just been on an absolute tear. It has been a phenomenal January for the Red Wings. But I kind of want to go one by one and just think, like, what are your points to what is working? What's making this team go? What's getting them to the point that they're currently at? And I think we're going to start with Brian.
Well, I mean, number one reason why they're playing so well, right? And I hate to steal everybody's obvious answer, but he went to me first. Alex Lyon, right? I mean, among goalies who have had 1,000 minutes played in the NHL right now, he is third in save percentage with a .923 save percentage behind Connor Hellebuck. I mean, he's amongst the best of the best in the NHL right now. And I mean, I know Ville Husso's coming back from injury. He got recalled from the AHL Grand Rapids Griffins, and then Derek Lalonde has done this and said this on multiple occasions, but he rides the hot hand. So I foresee, as long as Alex Lyon continues to play as well as he's playing, he's going to continue to be the netminder for the Detroit Red Wings for the near future.
Yeah, I have Alex Lyon and Danielle. I think we had done this last season that our mid-season MVP is going to be probably a goalie for the second season in a row. And I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse, but Alex Lyon has 20 games played, a .249 goals against, a .924 save percentage, the fourth best goalie in the league among goalies that have played 15 or more games. Yep. And I had put out during the season that we needed a goalie who could come in and steal a game, who could come in and make a big save for when the defense eventually had a lapse. And Alex Lyon has been that guy. And it's great to see him come in, be super, super weird, and just take the reins and run with the team. But Daniela, what's been your kind of like high point, something you've picked out as just why the season is going right so far?
Well, if you can look at every game that the Red Wings play well in, and obviously goaltending is a big part of that when they're riding these hot streaks, it's because they're getting solid goaltending. Maybe not so much at the beginning of the season. They were more so just outscoring some of the mistakes they were making at a certain point. But I think it's the commitment to playing defensively. And I think that the switch kind of happened in California on that West Coast trip. Something clicked where they either found their chemistry a little bit more, things are more cohesive, but it's been the team defense. And if you look at games where they're allowing 2-3 goals, they're playing outstanding. And most of the time they're going to win those games. And in the room, they've actually, and every team has this goal, right? It speaks for itself, but 2 or less. That's what they say. It's like if you give up 2 or less, you're going to win this game. You're going to get the goaltending. But of course, most teams think that way. But I think when you're actually getting the buy-in, some of the forwards are contributing defensively a little bit more. And that has been the key, because that month of December, granted, it's so hard to judge that month because they were down, 5 or 6 of their top forwards for most of December. But the team defense is there when they're playing well.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think we kind of looked at, and we had heard from people that Lalonde's we really don't know what we have because of how many people were hurt. The David Perron suspension was another one. people like to write off David Perron as like this like locker room guy who has experience, but he's one of the best puck protectors I've seen in the league
Oh yeah.
right now. And when you miss that that defense aspect of David Perron for that long of a stretch, you're going to give up more goals and there's going to be more turnover. So it's going to be a little bit more shaky, maybe not true representation of what the Red Wings actually are. But Scotty, where's your high point?
Yeah, mine has really been depth scoring. Well, my first two are actually the two that have already been said for sure. I mean, line and defense have been fantastic, but depth scoring is something that I think if that we were doing like biggest surprise, that would be mine. And so I guess it kind of is applicable here too. Like this is a team that last year we were all begging for goal scoring, and like that's such a like simple thing in the game of hockey to like look at and say, you know what, we need more of this. But goal scoring in general was such a big need. And this season, like they went out and they traded for Cat, and everybody was like, oh, there's goal scoring. And like Cat's been good. He's gonna go play, you know, in the All-Star game, and like he's been finally got off to a fantastic start, but he's cooled off a lot. And like that's been documented by a lot of people. And the reason why this team is still in like the top 4 or 5 in the league in goals scored a game, which is like a simple stat with all these advanced kind of numbers we have now, but you know, maybe the most important still is because of the depth scoring down the sheet. Obviously, the Kopp, Rasmussen, Fischer line has been fantastic lately, but I mean, just across the board, like right, like JT Compher's been a really solid addition, obviously, and obviously they've done a lot of shaking kind of in that top line as well. But yeah, I think for me, like this team isn't sitting where it's at, obviously without Lyon and without the team defense, but they needed to get more goal scoring from last year. And this year, not only did they get, you know, their hopefully top end goal scorer for years to come, they really addressed in the form of 11 free agents, a lot of depth scoring as well.
Confirmed today, Daniel Sprong, one of those, like probably, I called him, I think, the best bottom 6 player
I
in the
love
league
him.
right now. It has been confirmed today there's a Red Wings season ticket holder event happening at LCA. And during a signing, Daniel Sprong has confirmed that he has a group chat with all of the other players that he shares our dumb tweets in. So that is that has been confirmed that Daniel Sprong does that. But another thing I wanted to bring up is special teams. So special teams power play currently sits at 12th at 22.83%. The PK sits at 13th at 80.89. But in the month of January, the power play is at 28.6%. And the penalty kill is at 82.8%. And I think that is another thing where we got worried in December when the power play cooled off pretty substantially and the PK cooled off pretty substantially. And they seem to have turned it around, and that's credit to Bob Bugner. That's credit to Alex Tanguay for turning the special teams around and just trying to creep them back up. And they're in the top half of the league for both. So I think that's another thing that is, if that continues into the second half of the season, special teams is really going to catch fire. But Daniel, I think it's something about goal differential.
Yeah, you know, it was more so of a point just to kind of pay attention to it, because I know a lot of people standings watch, right? Like I watch the standings probably more than I'd like to admit. Okay, so I'm checking it
Same.
all the time, and it was the same for last year too. Like I was always checking just to see what everybody else is doing and what's going on, and just paying attention to where the Red Wings are at goal differential wise, because in the past that has been a bad stat for the Red Wings, right? You look at it and you're like, whoa, you don't want to look at that again. But right now they're a plus 16 on the season, and if you look at last year, especially in the Eastern Conference, teams didn't make the playoffs if they had a negative goal differential. And you look at some of the teams that are right in the mix with the Red Wings right now. You've got Toronto in there, obviously. Let me pull it up so I can look at wild card exactly. So yeah, Tampa in there plus 11. And then you got Toronto, who's also a plus 16. So we're the same in New York, who's trailing right there, is a minus 23. Pittsburgh is a plus 12. But just looking at the numbers, I'll predict right now that I feel like the Islanders are going to start to fall a little bit. Like you're going to see that even itself out as we move past the All-Star break and everything. So it's just a point I wanted to watch, that it hasn't been a good number for the Red Wings. Right now it's a good number, and that's usually a good indication of the teams that are going to be in the playoff spots at the end.
Yeah, right now they sit at 174 goals for through 49. At this point last season, they were at 147 goals scored. So like Scotty said, depth scoring way, way, way up. And that's part of it. I mean, you're getting, like you said, guys like Sprong, guys like Compher that go chip in. Michael Rasmussen's starting to heat back up
Mm-hmm.
and play a heavier game, which we've been requesting of him. Go out, use that body, use that size, hit some people, but also chip in offensively, which he's been able to do. So I think I want to go through some impressive stats. And I'm going to start, I think, so through 49 games in 2022-23, the Red Wings had 169 power play opportunities with 33 goals. This season, they have 184 power play opportunities and have converted on 42 of them. And I'm going to give my gold star to Lucas Raymond there, I think. The master at drawing penalties. He just
So
he
good.
uses the mantra of move your feet. That's what it is. You keep moving your feet, something good is going to happen to you because he gets the puck. He's been a hound on the puck. He moves his feet, gets tripped up, gets the power play for the Red Wings. And I think that's a big thing so far. One of my impressive points is just how many more power play opportunities we have had, and then now that it's starting to click, it's helping carry them forward. But I know we're going to have a stump speech coming up pretty soon on impressive points. So Brian, hop on your soapbox.
Yeah, I mean, this is a excuse me, a soapbox that I have popped on with Locked On Red Wings on multiple episodes the past couple of weeks, and I'm going to use your platform here with Grindline to do that as well. Moritz Seider and Jake Wollman, and added to that as well, have faced the toughest competition in the league by far. And when it comes to deployments, it's bar none. If you use Puck IQ and you use their Wood Money feature, it can help illustrate exactly, how hard their deployments have been all season long. It has Moritz Seider at 49% of his time on the ice against opposing elite competition. And 49%, you might think, okay, that's a top D pairing. Of course, they're going to play a lot against the top pairs or the top players on the other team. You compare that to Eric Cernak or Noah Dobson or Pellick, who are like the next closest guys in the league when it comes to the amount of time spent on the ice against elite competition. It's 44%, a 5% difference in their deployment against elite competition. That's not a small amount. If you pull up that graph on Puck IQ, Wollman and especially Seider are far and away up above on the top of that graph because of the way they're utilized. And to me, that says a lot about the faith that this organization has in Moritz Seider in being their number one D-man. They trust him at 22 years old to carry not just the weight of this team's defense, but heavier weight than any other defenseman in the league is currently getting. And then if you filter that same statistic by grit, because that's Puck IQ's nice way of saying fourth liners, he and Wollman by far have the fewest amount of minutes against the grit players in the NHL. So it's no surprise that they're getting the toughest matchups, but it is a huge surprise by how much they're getting the toughest matchups in the NHL out of any defenseman. And so, there's been a lot of discourse on social media lately, which is why I have this soapbox about Seider's regression. In his rookie season, he spent about even 33%, I would say, at grit, middle of the pack, and elite competition. From there, he's just taken more and more responsibility on until this point this season, where he's at nearly 49, nearly 50% of his time on the ice against elite competition. He has been absolutely stellar every single game, especially as the season has rolled on. He got into a groove last year in the second half of the season, and he's done so again this second half of the season. He was great against Vegas. Mickey Redmond calls it out. Everyone who's watching the games is calling out that he's been great. Don't trust what you're seeing on social media is my soapbox when you see those player cards. He has been fantastic.
I love advanced stats for a lot of reasons, right? Like you can get a lot of information from them, but I don't love them for moments like this because you see that it's pretty simple. And this can just lay it out there for everybody. If you look at the end of the game and you read the game summary and you look at everybody's ice time, your best players have the most ice time. Who always has the most ice time for the Red Wings? Moritz Seider. It's pretty freaking simple. Like he's great. He's matching up, like you said, against the toughest matchups in the league. He's been phenomenal. And I understand everybody's concern offensively, but let me tell you, if you talk to Mo, he's like, I think I'm playing great. He's got the great attitude for it. He loves getting the tough matchups, and it's only going to make him even better than he already is in the long run.
Bingo. Exactly.
Scotty, you want to give Mo some love?
I mean, I guess, yeah.
Scotty's
Who
tired of hearing
doesn't,
me
right?
talk about it.
Well, I mean,
Obligated.
it's wild too, because I mean, when you think back to like this time a year ago, January of last year was when they put Wallman with Mo for the first time, right? And so seeing that now we've had like about a calendar year of that pair together and seeing and I guess that's maybe giving love to Wallman too. I guess maybe I broke the rules a little bit, but like both of them together have just been so stellar, and that pair has just like, who would have ever thought, right? Like when that trade happened and when we got Wallman and like obviously on draft night for Seider, like who would have ever thought that those two just would have made for like a truly like top end, high end, high usage top pair at the NHL, and here we are. It's really really cool.
And to add on to that, yeah, Scotty, Jake Wallman too. Let's not overlook what he's done. You brought it up, trade.
Yeah.
I tweeted this out or X'd it out a couple days ago that Jake Wallman, he had to play every remaining game with the Red Wings this season they acquired him, or he would have became a G6 UFA. If they wanted to retain his RFA rights, they had to play him every single game after they attained him. They did. They signed him to a contract. I think he had surgery, came back halfway through the season, and very quickly rose through the ranks to top pairing. Like, that was a steal of all steals for Steve Yzerman when it comes to trade acquisitions. And now he's second in the league, just behind Moritz Seider, when it comes to defensive zone deployment, when it comes to the difficulties that he faces on a nightly basis. While Moritz Seider's at 49% against elite competition, Jake Wallman's at 46.3. That's still 2% higher than Eric Cernak, who's second with the Tampa Bay Lightning, who's second in the league when it comes to deployment against elite competition. He's been great, and he's top 10 in shots blocked in all situations this season. Like Jake, we give all this love to Moritz Seider because he's the prized possession, taken 6th overall, won the Calder Trophy. But Jake Wallman has been just as instrumental. And I'm sorry, I'm on my soapbox, Greg. I apologize. But he scored his 10th goal of the season the other night against the Vegas Golden Knights. That is a new career high in goals for him. He was the 9th. Cop later became the 10th player to have 10 plus goals with the Detroit Red Wings. Joe Veleno can get 10 next. He's at 9. Patrick Kane's going to get 10. He's at 7 when he comes back to be healthy. You talk about depth scoring like Scotty was talking about earlier. You could have 12 10-plus goal scorers by the end of the season. The rest of the teams you're chasing in the Atlantic Division right now, at max, have 6. Depth scoring is absolutely insane right now. And Jake Wallman's a big part of that while playing against some of the toughest competition in the league. You give Seider and Wallman some time against easier competition. Like, I mean, I'd love to see them get some minutes against like some of those gritty lines, because you'll see them ball out. They have an incredible offensive upside to them too, but because they're so good defensively, that's how they're being used. So there's so much more to them still than we're seeing this season. And I will hammer that home to the listeners every single time I get a microphone in front of me.
Oh, we know. We're aware now. Yep. Thank you.
Didn't they also say that Jake Wallman has now the most goals from a defenseman since Mike Green?
Yes.
Had 15, I think.
2016, 2017, Mike Green was the last Red Wings defenseman to hit 10 goals.
Yeah, so I mean, and Jake Wallman is number 1 in the league for Sellies per 60, I think. Best Sellies in the league. But to Mo Seider's point, Mo Seider is has played 46 minutes more than any other player on the Detroit Red Wings per natural stat trick. And I actually found a cool stat while I was on here looking around. If you look at penalties drawn, Lucas Raymond's drawn 24 penalties. The next highest is Dylan Larkin with 16. So it's Lucas Raymond is a penalty draw machine. Danielle, you got anything else that's keeping this team rolling?
Yeah, and I mean, it's not a super interesting stat because it's a little bit of an obvious one, but I felt like I had to give Dylan Larkin his spot too, because his season has been incredible. He's on an 11 game point streak right now. He's got 22 goals on the season, 24 assists. This is the 5th season in his career that he's hit 20 plus goals. And I think just the things that Dylan has been through on the year and everything that's gone on for him, and he's changed line mates a few times, but he always seems to be the motor for that. And I thought it was interesting when you look at his power play goals. Last year, he only had 16 power play goals total. He already has 8 on the season this year. So I guess he's kind of in that same range, but I think he's been scoring at such a high clip that we're going to see those points rise too. And he's been great. And I think we just have to give him his love too. Like I said, 11-game point streak right now. The captain's the motor.
Yeah, 46 points in 43 games. And for the people who used to yell from the rooftops that Dylan Larkin's not a 1C, they're awfully quiet this season.
It was not that long ago.
No, it was right before the season started.
Yeah.
Really.
If
And
Dylan Larkin was legitimately your 2C on any team, if he was legitimately your number 2 center, you'd be a really, really good team. Like that would be, yeah, it'd be great to have Dylan Larkin as your 2C, honestly.
I would wonder what your 1C is.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, like you said, he's the motor of this team. He's what's driving the team forward. Literally the captain in every sense of the word. And it's been really good to see him just go out there and you talk about the Red Wings historically recently not having game breakers. And I think Larkin is trending toward that game breaker status to where you know if you're down, he's going out there and putting 110% on the ice, laying everything out to go and try to get that game back. Raymond's been doing kind of the same thing, and I think Raymond could eventually also enter that same conversation as guys who you double, triple shift just to try to get the game back because you know they can do it. But Scotty, what's your interesting take of the season so far?
Yeah. Well, we talked about it a little bit before we hopped on air too. Brian tried to steal it from me, but it was I think it's fascinating. Daniella brought up the defense earlier and high danger shot attempts against it. Like that's something that at least Brian and I on Locked On Wings have really been pointing out that in January, it's been a massive, massive step forward. And in December, it felt like it was something that they really struggled at. And obviously, just since Newsy has taken over, really, the defense has had its ups and its downs. And we know the system he's trying to run and the execution of that has been maybe iffy at times. But this season as a whole, on 5-on-5 high danger shots against, the Wings are the 5th lowest in the entire league with 83. The only teams ahead of them are the Oilers, the Panthers, the Wild, and the Kraken are like way ahead of everybody. They're like, they have less than 75. The Wild are second with 81. So like they have a pretty big gap there. But the Wings being top 5 in high danger shot attempts against, and like they're very high up there in most low danger given up, which again is like part of, I think, that this system they're trying to emulate is, there's some faith in Lyon now. And I think that what they're trying to execute on a night to night basis is we're going to allow shots, right? Like their shot against totals are not low. They've even, when we played Edmonton, like that's a good example, but even lately, right? The last couple of weeks, it's, 30 plus shot attempts against, but the shot attempts you're going to get off are going to be those low danger shots. And they are going to, at a minimum, defend the high danger and prevent the high danger opportunities. And they have done that really well, obviously in January, but again, at even strength, top 5 on the season as a whole.
For those shots against, they're currently 5th highest in the league at 32.43 shots against per game. They're the 8th highest in blocked shots at 794. Yeah. 223 of those blocked shots come in January. And that's another Moritz Seider point. Moritz Seider blocks a ton of shots.
Sure.
That's the other part of it. So they do like to give up shots, but they also like to block shots at a fairly high rate. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. We've answered some questions already, thanks to questions from Gabe to talk about Seider's analytics. Christian to talk about, Christian's going to have a Patrick Kane question, which we'll answer after the break. Eli also asked about Seider's analytics. But we're going to take a quick break for word from DraftKings. Before we come back, we're going to take a look forward at the season and answer the rest of the questions that we got coming in. So give us 1 minute. We'll be right back. We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. And with guys like DeBrincat and Kane and Dylan Larkin piling up points, you always have good choices for bets on DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 8778-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved. And we're back, and we're going to take a look forward at the season. What do the Red Wings need to do to stay in this playoff hunt, to squash the dreams of the Toronto Maple Leafs? Maybe what they're going to have to do at the trade deadline and the keys to the rest of the season. But I kind of want to start with what still needs work. And I think we can go right off of what Scotty was saying, letting up all those shots per game, 32.43 shots against per game. I think my one point is that, and Daniella might have something to say about this, is the defense has tightened up, but it needs to now stay consistent. You have trust in Lyon. You're banking on him to make some of those saves, but I think the defense needs to keep the level of play they're doing right now because it has gotten better.
Yeah, you took the word right out of my mouth, and it's consistency. It's being able to do that on a night in, night out basis, which we've seen through the month of January. And I think that's great, with the exception of the Dallas game. But that's an example of what can happen if this team comes out flat and just for one period, or they don't play at their best for a 10-minute stretch throughout a game. They have to stay sharp. And I know Derek Lalonde says this a lot, so it might be kind of beating the dead horse at this point, but it's they're not good enough to have the off games. They can't go out there and have their B game and expect to be in the mix. And that's no knock to these guys. We're talking about how great they've been playing, and it might be a little bit above what everybody expected right now. But if you're going to hold that, you have to make sure you're on your A game all the time. And the key is consistency there, just being able to find something that works for them consistently. And I think the goaltending boost is definitely going to help.
Brian, what do you got as what needs work so far, or for the rest of the season?
Well, we talk a lot about, the depth scoring, right? We rant and rave about it. But one person I would like to see score a little bit more consistently, who's flown a little bit under the radar, I think, because the depth scoring has been so good, is Alex DeBrincat. He's 18 goals on the season now. He is second on the team. But when you traded for him, and thankfully because he kind of forced his way to Detroit, you didn't have to give up a ton for him. You were expecting maybe not a 40-goal score. He did that twice in Chicago, but at least a 30-goal score. But he scored, Scotty, 6 goals since his...
Yeah, I forget what our stat was, and he's added one to it, but it was 5 since late November at even strength or something. Yeah.
He scored 9 goals in 7 games at the start of the season, and then he has now scored 9 since then. He scored most recently against Dallas. We were joking. We joke on Locked On Red Wings. We do an episode about a player, and then immediately they turn it on. We did an episode about Andrew Kopp and how he hasn't been producing, and then he's been on a tear. And then the same thing happened with Alex DeBrincat, where we were like, when will he score again? Then he scored that night. But, I mean, the consistency needs to be there with Alex DeBrincat. He's getting a lot of shots on net, and his shooting percentage is low, way lower than it normally is for him. He's just kind of snake-bitten. And so I don't know what needs to change, or if anything needs to change. Maybe he needs to just keep hammering, and then eventually the dams will break. But this is a guy you brought in to be at least, pair with Larkin as another 30-plus goal scorer. And it's kind of been slow going for him. I still have faith, not giving up. But, I mean, if you can add 30 goals by Alex DeBrincat on top of all the depth scoring you're already getting from the rest of this roster, you're looking at a team that is not just 4 lines deep, but also a threat in the top 6 as well. And that is a dangerous formula to defend against if you're another team, because either you're trying to match up all 4 lines against their 4 lines, or you're trying to make your matchups heavy against the top 6. You can't do both unless you're double shifting your best guys all the time, and then you'll just get worn down. So you need Alex DeBrincat to be Alex DeBrincat if this team, you want to make a deep push into the playoffs, assuming you get there. But right now, the trend's looking good.
Daniella, do you think bumping Cat back up to align with Larkin and Raymond is maybe the key to him there?
For now, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what move is made when Patrick Kane does return to the lineup, because it kind of seemed like they had a little thing going where it's like Cat and Kane are going to play together, Larkin and Raymond are going to play together, and you're seeing, obviously, that's broken up right now without Kane. So I think it could help. We've seen a lot more chances with that line, and you can tell that they're just a high-flying offensive line. When the three of them are out there together, something's happening on the ice. So I think it could help, but I think it will be interesting now, only one game until the break as we're talking right now, and that's against Ottawa. What will happen when Patrick Kane does come back?
Yeah, that was a question from Christian on Twitter is does Kane slot back into that second line when he comes back? I think he does. And I think you still keep Alex DeBrincat on the top with Larkin and Raymond. And with how, like you said, Andrew Kopp has been on a tear and he's been playing very well, not just defensively, which he normally does, but the offense has really picked up. Maybe you try a second line of an Andrew Kopp, JT Compher, and Patrick Kane. And then you can play you move David Perron down to a third line. And I think you have to try and maybe shake it up a little bit because you're right. If you could get 30 goals, I think we said 30 to 35 is what we wanted out of Alex DeBrincat for this season. And if he can hit that, and what you need to do to make him hit that or help him hit that is play him with Larkin and Lucas Raymond, because him and Larkin had pretty instant chemistry when they started playing. And it's coming back. Like you said, he scored the other night. And I think, Brian, what we need to do is before every game, we just make a list. We'll mention half the list. You mention the other half, and then everyone will have a great game. But I think Kane, when he comes back, I think he does slot back on that second line. And I think you do see a little bit of a shakeup. But Scotty, what do you think we got to do to keep Cat going?
Yeah, well, I mean, for Cat, yeah, like I do think, to Daniella's point, that the navigation of him with Kane is going to be really interesting because, I mean, like she said, like for a while, right? I mean, it seems still really like they're gonna kind of just be together forever, which is like adorable. But and if it works, then that's great. But I he did
make a Lifetime movie out of it.
Right. He did get off to such a hot start at the beginning of the year, like unsustainably hot, to be fair. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think that part of me just thinks that what Brian said is like kind of true, and it's like he's just gonna have to keep like gripping and ripping and hope that like some of them just start finding the back of the net. I think maybe a little bit is snake bite, which is kind of a cop out answer, but he's getting shots off. He's still getting plenty of shots off every night. It's not like he doesn't have attempts. So I don't know. I think it'll be really interesting to see how it looks after the All-Star break, though, for sure.
Move the nets a foot to the left and he'll score so many more goals because it seems like it's been a lot wider right off the post. So if they just shift the net a little bit, I think
like that one corner, just add like an extension to that one.
An
corner.
extension, yeah, exactly. Just extend the corner a little bit.
He's been robbed quite a few times. Like him specifically, I can think of 3 instances of him just being absolutely robbed, like goaltender making a
pad save,
like Andrei Vasilevsky's save. Like,
yeah,
I think Andrei Vasilevsky actually made one of them. Yes, right.
Yeah,
that was
he did.
Right.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it's not fair. Vasilevsky is not human, so like, I mean, that's a gimme for him.
Absurd.
Has anyone else got any point? What else do we need to do to keep going forward? I think it is we're at a solid spot.
Yeah,
I think if you keep doing what you're doing and you win 19 of your remaining games, you're in. I mean, that's over 90. That's like 95, 96 points, I think, on the season. I think the cutoff, when I looked at Micah on Twitter, Ineffective Math, I think the cutoff for our division is 91.2 points. I don't know. The red line was overlapping. Was it 91.2, Brian?
It was 91.1, and the Red Wings were projected at 91.2.
Okay. So
that's
I think if we need
hockey, baby.
That's playoff hockey right there.
Yeah. So I think they can do it as long as they stay healthy, as long as the goaltending stays consistent, and they do just what they've done through January, continue to do that through the rest of the season. And I think they're in a really solid spot. When they come back from All-Star break, I don't think they play until February 10th, which is a stupid long break.
And then immediately go to the West Coast right after that, Western Canada.
Yeah, which I'm assuming will probably be the dad's trip.
I don't know. I have not heard anything about.
Yeah, that's your wheelhouse.
Normally it's West Coast trips.
Yeah, or they did it like a Nashville, Dallas one year too. So I don't know if there's something there. Yeah, they did I don't know what they'll do for that. I haven't heard anything about it. It's actually a question I should probably ask.
Yeah, because I hear all the other teams are doing it. Daniella, write that down. Go ahead and when is the father?
If you're a dad, do you want to go to Western Canada in February?
No.
Is that the
No.
trip we wanna
No.
do?
Well,
Unless
do
it's
they
like ice
do they
fishing or
like
something.
do they switch it off year to year? Like, is this a mom's year or is this a? Don't they like switch it off
So
too?
the last one was dad's, but they did do mom. Yeah, so I guess if they do keep the rotation going,
Oh,
it
okay.
would be a mom's trip.
Yeah.
Moms are not going to want to go to Western Canada in
They
February.
definitely going to Western Canada.
Vancouver. Let's go.
Okay, so I hear Vancouver's pretty sweet, and it's on my list of places
Vancouver's
to go.
Same.
So I want to talk a little bit about trade deadline, because that's the other thing that's coming up after the All-Star break. It is like March 8th is trade deadline, I believe, somewhere around there. And we had talked about it a little bit. And at this point, I think where we're at and how they've been playing, that it would be really hard for me to see Yzerman as a seller. I don't see Yzerman as a seller. I don't see him as a huge buyer. But I think the point that I had made with Ryan was, if you could sell a couple pieces and improve the team from within by moving those pieces out, and recouping assets, then maybe that's the kind of move you make. So maybe you move a defenseman to bring in an Edvinsson, and at that point you're improving your defense and you're gaining assets at the same time. But I don't see, there are people that are asking about players like we've been apparently linked by Dave Pagnotta to Jakob Chychrun and Frankie Vetrano. People are talking about Elias Lindholm, and I don't see moves that big happening, because I don't think we're jumping both feet into the fire to try and just push for a Stanley Cup right now. But I think the moves you can make would be from within to improve the team without having to expend capital just in case something happens and you need that capital.
I actually don't hate Chychrun just because of age and like, so to your point, I agree with you. And Brian and I had this conversation earlier last week as well, where like if there was I think that buying is probably in the team's best interest. I certainly, unless it completely falls apart, selling is not on the table if they're like even relatively close to like the postseason. But I think that now, if they are going to acquire talent, I agree with you. The talent that they would acquire would be people that you are confident are going to be assets for this team beyond this season, right? Like to
Trevor
your point,
Zegras.
I 100% agree. I don't think this is we're going to put all of our chips on 2024. Like that's that with all due respect, they were bad for far too long to make that an acceptable thing. Where like 2024 is all that matters, right? Like this is something that you built, and like the Yzer plan was marketed as like this long-term sustainable product. And so that's why like Chychrun doesn't, that one kind of, and like there's been a ton of, like he says it's ridiculous, obviously these two fan bases can't stand each other. There's plenty of back and forth there. Like that's its own kind of thing. But that one was somewhat interesting to me just because he's still young enough where you could acquire him and you could have him on your blue line for years. Like that's not like a rental necessarily. And you have a lot of younger assets, right? Like you have, and they're not going to get rid of any of the top dogs, right? Like the Edvinsson's not going anywhere. Like that kind of goes without saying. Like the high end prospects, they're not going to part ways with for that same reason. They're looking for sustained success. But if they can, in the margins, I guess this is really just a long way of saying what you just said, but like in the margins, right? Like if they are going to bring someone in, it's going to be like, oh, they still have a lot of second round picks and third round picks. And like, those are good picks, but also you have a plethora of them. And like, you have a lot of kind of like B-level prospects, right? Who aren't like these blue chip slam dunks. But if you get an NHL, like proven NHL caliber player who's in their mid 20s, that can be on your team for the next 4 to 7 years, then like that's something, and that's, an extreme, I guess, amount of years too. But even just beyond this year period, I think that are the people that they're looking to acquire. I agree with you that it's not going to be like an all in on this season thing. And I don't expect them to really be players in, unless it's really cheap, a lot of like more expensive rentals either.
We have a spare 15 defensive prospects
Right,
exactly, that are never
exactly.
all going to make the Red Wings.
Yeah, I kind of also have a slightly different perspective on things. I like your idea, Greg, about the making trades to free up space for Edvinsson and Albert Johansson, but I view it as this at this point. And again, Scotty and I talked about it. We were kind of either they're going to stand pat or they're going to buy softly, a soft buy. Because I think, and you mentioned this, Greg, this team's not going to win the Stanley Cup this year. It's highly unlikely unless they go on an incredible run. I mean, nothing's impossible. Playoffs are the playoffs. We've seen 8 seeds like the Kings go on to win
We
the
saw
Cup
the
and win
Blues
it
do
all.
it.
Yeah, we saw the Blues. They were last place in January. It's not impossible. But the way this team's constructed right now, like Scotty said, this team is building for consistency in the future. I think Yzerman more than likely is going to want to see what this team has got the way it is now. And I think that trading pieces away to just allow Edvinsson to play isn't in the cards for this season because that's going to mess with the chemistry and the gelling that this roster already has. And trust me, I'm with you. I think that without sounding too crass, there's a couple defensive players I would want to see Edvinsson up, and I would be willing to move a couple defensive players too. But I just think that Yzerman's interested in watching this team learn how to win while keeping the best prospects in the Grand Rapids Griffins, as much as I hate it, because I think Berggren, I think Albert Johansson, and I think Simon Edvinsson all deserve a spot on the NHL roster. But I think he wants them to learn how to play together and build that chemistry in the same system now that is being taught down there with the Griffins now that Watson's out. And learn how to play together and then come to the NHL level, kind of have that experience. Because I think if you throw Simon Edvinsson, I think he'd do fine, but I think it'd be weird to send Edvinsson to the NHL now while the team's trying to make a playoff push, where instead of doing it at the start of the season where he's allowed to make those crucial mistakes he needs to make to grow as a player. I think doing it now is a little late in the season. I think Yzerman's more or less going to probably stay pat when it comes to the trade deadline. If anything, if he's going to move a defenseman out, it's going to move to be able to bring in a better defenseman back in via trade, an NHL veteran with playoff experience. I would kick the tires on Noah Hanifin, honestly, if I was looking at the Calgary Flames, because he's 27 years old. He's making $5 million. He's going to be a UFA like Chychrun. He kind of fits that window, but they're going to be asking for a ton in return. But like you said, Greg, there's a plethora of prospects.
Yep.
So if you're going to trade for somebody, for me, it's not going to be a rental for 1 year. It's going to be somebody you think you can sign. That's my long monologue. Sorry.
Chychrun's knees still freak me out. I think that's the big thing. And if you were going for a younger defenseman, Noah Hanifin would be mine too. Because you've seen knee problems go sideways even after they've been repaired, or even more. I mean, Robbie Fabry's knees. Well, you do 5 prayers every time you see him take a hit. Because you're like, I hope his knees are okay. But Daniella, what would be your trade starting today? If you had to do something, what would be your trade deadline strategy?
Right now, it would be just to stand pat. The one move that I could see happening, and I know people might come at me for this one, but it's because of his deal and his age and everything else, is David Perron. Like, just depending on what offers are on the table at that point and where the team is at. If this team is legitimately in a spot, David Perron's a huge playoff piece, and I don't think I don't think he's going anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. But if there's a good enough deal on the table and the team's still kind of teetering around that wild card spot, I could see them trying to get something for him if it's a good return for David Perron. But I'm with you guys. I just feel like all of these prospects that the Red Wings have right now in their system, there's still so many that it's we don't exactly know what we have yet, right? So you have to be careful when you're getting ready to deal them all away, when you've worked so hard to collect them. And like we said, we don't expect a Stanley Cup this year. We're building for the future still right now, but the pieces might be here. So unless you feel really passionately about someone that's available at the trade deadline, figure out what you have. And then maybe in a year or two, you might be talking about, okay, let's deal some of these pieces to bring in some of the pieces we need to fill the holes on our NHL roster.
That could help with value from our end too, right? Like there's some guys that, if you don't know the value, the team you're trading them with certainly doesn't either, right? So like that's another great point. Like obviously that could help raise the value you're giving up as well. So for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the good points of that is someone like Marco Kasper, who had a slow start to the season and is now absolutely on fire. It takes him a little bit to get used to the game. And I think it goes back to Chris's question, like, when do we see Carter Mazur in a Red Wings jersey? And he's another guy that, do you know the extent of what Carter Mazur can do? And we saw him, he was our dark horse, I think, at the beginning of the season, that if he would have had a good enough camp and a good enough preseason, that I think he might have been able to sneak his way onto the team, because his development is more suited for a bottom 6 role. Not that that's his ceiling, but his style of game is grit, in your face, piss you off style hockey. But at the end of the day, could be a top 6 player, but could develop in a bottom 6 role. And Mazur's been doing very well with the Griffins. And he's another one where, do you know what you have at this point in a Carter Mazur? Do you know what you have at this point? I mean, you got Nate Danielson, who just got traded to Portland. He's another one who's going to have to come up through the system. Yzerman's done so well, and there are people, again, that are complaining about Yzerman's draft and where's all the picks and how come they're not playing for the team. When you don't get lottery picks, those guys take a while to develop. And the worst way to develop your prospects is to throw them directly into the NHL and tell them to have at it. And if you look at it, and you could kind of see it, and it's not a knock to Michael Rasmussen, but he probably should have went back to junior that first year and just dominated at a junior level before coming up, because when you put him in that such a high pressure situation, from playing with 16, 17, 18-year-olds to playing against men, it's a gigantic jump. So it's more of a be patient, like Axel Sandin Palika. You might not see him in Grand Rapids next year. He might take another year to come over to North America. It's patience with the prospects. We will see them eventually. The ones we've identified as, and I mean, we're smart enough to say that's a good prospect. They'll make it eventually. It's not going to be right now. And it's exciting because they're so good and it's the future of the team. But what they're trying to do now is Yzerman he built a dynasty in Tampa. He's trying to do the same thing in Detroit. And it takes time. It takes patience. It takes a rolling cap. It takes a lot of prospects. And he set that up going forward. Anything else you guys have on the trade deadline? What you'd like to see happen? Any crazy moves? How we can fleece Ottawa again and make them more sad?
No, I think
Let's
overall.
just beat them on Wednesday.
Well,
Can we
yes,
just do that?
exactly.
There we go.
Well, also,
Say-
it'd be a fun little caveat because I think if you beat, I think Tampa Bay is done playing, right? For they're in their All-Star break now. If you beat Ottawa, I think you technically take third place in the division on a tiebreaker heading into the All-Star break. It'd be a nice, doesn't mean anything, but it would make you feel good. And the Traders need something to make them feel good after what happened on Sunday. We're not going to name it, but after what happened on Sunday, it'd be nice. It'd be nice.
Brian, I think you've brought it up 8 times. So if you want to talk about it, we can, dude.
No, we have not. I have not brought it up 8 times.
I brought it up once.
Yeah.
I brought it up.
Scotty's always looking to make me look bad on our shows. He frequently succeeds, though.
So yeah, the Red Wings, if they do beat the Ottawa Senators, they will have 50 games played, same as Tampa. We right now have a game in hand on them. We will each have 59 points. Same number of regulation wins, same number of regulation losses, and same number of overtime losses. We will be absolutely tied with them.
But don't we have the head-to-head because we've beaten them twice this season?
We would get the head-to-head. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that would be the tiebreaker right there. But we would leapfrog the Toronto Maple Leafs, who will at that point have 3 games in hand on us. But they're riding the struggle bus back and forth right now. So I want to thank you guys for hopping on to do this with me. It's been a lot of fun. I like to get a kind of a meeting of the minds a couple times a season just to make sure everyone's on the same page and that we throw the ideas off each other. And it's always great to talk to you guys. And we go back and forth online. We see each other when we can, but it's good to get us all in the same Zoom room to break stuff down. I want to give you guys a chance to shout out your socials, what you got going on. We're going to start with you, Daniella.
All right. Socials at Daniella Bruce _ because someone still has Daniella Bruce without the underscore and I cannot hunt them down. Trust me, I keep trying. No, but out Daniella Bruce _ and Red and White Authority coming out this week. We're actually going to have Emily Kaplan joining us from ESPN to get a nice little national perspective.
Sweet.
Yeah. She's excellent. She's going to have some great stuff for us. So that'll be the next podcast.
Love Emily Kaplan, by the way. She's fantastic.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Scotty and I frequently talk whenever there's an ESPN broadcast of the Wings game. We frequently talk that she's probably our favorite person that they have on their broadcast.
100%.
She's so great.
Which is why I made this shirt. National announcers versus Detroit hockey, because most of them hate us, but Emily is fantastic.
Emily's a dog.
I didn't even notice that. I didn't even read your shirt until right now.
Should we take a couple minutes to talk about that Panthers Red Wings broadcast from a couple of weeks ago where Paul Biasina didn't want to give the Red Wings any props? Or we?
No, you can shout out your socials though, Brian. That's cool.
Biz hates the Wings. What's your socials, Brian?
At LO_Red Wings is our Twitter account. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram as well. My personal Twitter account is at Brian Fischer WWJ because I work at WWJ News Radio 950. Scotty, what's yours?
Mine is at Bentley Scotty. It took me a while to think of that. That's my personal. That's the Red Wings, and then I do Locked On Tigers as well. Yeah, Cold Keith extension, fun. Pitchers and catchers right around the corner. Super, super pumped. So yeah, it should be a fun year for that as well. And then I write for the news. You can check out all that stuff.
So we could use the hockey meme on the Tigers now. What? They signed this guy to this contract without playing a single game in the MLB?
Right. Dude, well, it's we don't have to like I will go forever, so please cut me off. But like they will like this is the first time the Tigers have done that, right? Like that's uncharted territory for them. That's a popular thing in a lot of other sports. The first time the Tigers have really done that, so we'll see.
Do you have faith in Colt Keith?
Yeah, he's the
Lock
man.
up your future stars, baby.
He's
That's
so
what you
good,
do.
dude. I'm so pumped.
You can find me online at Breaking the Wing. You find the Grindline Podcast online at Grindline Pod. We'll give a shout out to the Hockey Podcast Network for hosting us and spreading us around. Vintage Detroit, which is the only place you should get your Detroit jerseys from and worked on. You can find all of us on YouTube in some format. Daniella's on all the Red Wings stuff. Locked On guys are on YouTube. We're on YouTube. Go find our stuff. Sub, like our videos. Turn on the notifications. Whenever stuff goes live, you will get notified. You can check out our merch on redbubble.com by searching the Grindline. And I got an email today. I think we're going to be doing some shirts with Vintage Detroit. So we'll see about that. They have contacted me for t-shirts.
Nice.
So we'll see how that goes. But thank you guys again for coming on and spending some time with me. It's been awesome. And we're going to have to do it again. We'll do a season wrap up at the end of the year.
It was a blast.
But that's going to do it for us tonight. So you stay classy, Hockey Town.